Hi, welcome to Platonics. I'm Jords.
I'm Rocky, and this is the show where we consume some media, digest it a little bit, and then baby bird it back out into your role-playing game sessions. It's a new year,
Wow.
George, and I'm
This
trying a
is
new
the third
intro.
time baby birding has come up in a role-playing context in 2 weeks for me.
So we are coming up on year 3 now. Well, no, we've just started year 3 now. So I'm going to skip the what the show is about. Should we go straight into what kind of content we have consumed for conversion into that beautifully structured session jus that we both enjoy?
Absolutely. The inputs to the juice making machine for this episode is pirate media.
Yar,
The
yar,
swashbuckling
me
kind.
hearties.
What is a pirate's favorite letter?
You'd think it would be R, but in truth,
You would.
it's the C they love most.
Oh, absolutely. We are doing pirates. This is one that's been requested a couple of times. A lot of different takes on pirates. Do people want to know about like the history and economic reasons why piracy would be a viable mechanism? Turns out it's probably not the bit that most people are keen on.
Absolutely not. They want to be Captain Jack Sparrow.
So yeah, we figured we might first build some sort of theme park ride and then retroactively turn that into a role-playing game.
That's actually, I'm really glad that the theme park ride, so what George is referring to, if you haven't heard of it, is that Pirates of the Caribbean, before it was anything else, was just a theme park ride. I think it was like a roller coaster-esque one, like one of those narrative roller coasters. But one of my favorite articles about game design isn't actually about game design at all, and I'll link to this in the show notes. It's an interview with a roller coaster designer talking about how they think about designing the experience of being on a roller coaster, which and like what people feel at each step. And there's all these little like design techniques that they can deploy to make people feel certain ways. And I'm like, it's not the worst metaphor I've ever seen for being a role-playing game master. You are the one who gets to design the roller coaster, and you have certain tools of the trade at your disposal. I'll dig that article up because I really, really like it. I feel like we would have a good chat, me and Mr. Roller Coaster Designer.
I like the metaphor insofar as like it's got the beats and the highs and the lows and the twists and the turns, but a roller coaster is by design on rails. Whereas something like a water slide has a little bit of a dynamics element to it.
Yeah. Or like, see, now now we're just going off the deep end, but now I'm like, which is where your water slide should be, by the way. You don't want a water slide landing in the shallow end. That's how you end up with a bruised tailbone. Yeah, like bumper car arena. I don't know. Something that puts the players in control.
Bumper car arena is the metaphor for the game loop, but there's a bit of dynamics in that you can bump into other people, but you're eventually going to end up in the same point to do it all again. Maybe
Yeah.
with some resources gained or lost.
Like go-kart track designer.
All right, the new challenge here is what carnival-esque thing can't be metaphored into a role-playing game designer's kind of wheelhouse?
I don't think that's the topic that we picked for this episode.
Pirates,
at all.
that's right.
We picked pirates. Yeah, so I'm assuming you did not, unless the budget for this show has increased way more than I would have thought. I'm assuming you did not fly to Disney and ride Pirates of the Caribbean to prep for this show. What did you
You have a
consume?
budget?
No.
I've been getting by on the lint in my pockets.
Yeah, yep.
I went back and watched the OG, the Curse of the Black Pearl, Pirates of the Caribbean film. That was my primary touch point for this one. Along with the like 10 billion other pieces of pirate-based media that cropped up in the last 25-ish years.
Yeah. They definitely had a moment there between like Pirates of the Caribbean, but then also like Black Sails was a thing for a while. Our Flag Means Death on the perhaps less serious end of things.
You watched the pages of a book?
Yeah. For my homework, I watched the pages of the pirate book, which I would argue is perhaps the only pirate story we have ever told, which is Treasure Island. I've had a copy of Treasure Island on my shelf for 10 plus years and I've never read it. And I finally got around to reading it, and it's one of those experiences that you have of like reading the OG thing and being like, ugh, this is so tropey, and then realizing that it's where all the tropes came from.
It's how I felt about reading The Magician by Raymond Feist.
Yeah, it's got it all. It's got Long John Silver. It's got the ghost of Captain Flint. It's got old Ben Gunn and his desire for cheese. It's
the classic
amazing.
Pirate trope.
And I think one of my favorite things about it is that I don't think I've ever seen a straight down the line adaptation of this. What I have seen is two things. I've seen Disney's Treasure Planet, which actually slaps, and I will hear no arguments that it was like not an incredible movie. And the other like visual touch point for this, for me, was the Muppet adaptation of Treasure Island, which I not only saw as a film, but that was one of the like few video games that we had, was the like Muppet Treasure Island point and click like live video
adventure game.
Adventure, yeah. And so when I was reading this book, Captain Smollett was Sam the Eagle and Ben Gunn was a robot. And I just think that made the whole thing better.
Now that you bring up video games, I actually have another thing that I've been playing recently, which is Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, Sea of Thieves is a good one. Sea of Thieves is like very inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean. The other entry in the video game space, which again, I've found myself sort of flashing back to when thinking about this, was Sid Meier's Pirates.
Yeah. Played a lot of that back in the day.
I did not ever play the original, like the OG one, but I did play the like mid-2000s remake a lot, which I gather was pretty much the same mechanics, but with a fresh graphics engine. And that was like, if you want to think about like a little bit more of the economics, I guess, of like running a pirate ship,
which I do,
then what you want is not a role-playing game. What you want to do is just go play Sid Meier's Pirates again.
I mean, I've also played a lot of the Patrician series and very strong piracy elements, empire building through piracy, but not really swashbuckling. Doesn't hold the same person-to-person, like bombastic interactions.
Which I think is what we want. And I feel like that's a good segue into having a bit of a chat about what makes a pirate story a pirate story. What are the ingredients that we want to make sure that we have prepped in our pockets, on our index cards, in our notebooks, like whatever, lined up and ready to like drop at the table? What are the like things that we want to identify and pull out of these stories to make sure we are delivering on what people kind of want out of a pirate story?
We've kind of touched on this in a couple of other bits of our episodes in the past. Why do people want piracy? Why do they want to be pirates? What does that lifestyle offer?
Freedom, mate.
It's freedom.
That's what a ship is.
Right, it's some level of self-determination.
Yeah, and I think that's actually really interesting. Probably the one difference between the narrative of Treasure Island and the narrative of everything that we kind of see these days is that in Treasure Island, the pirates are the bad guys. It's a boys' own adventure, and Hawkins is like hoisting the Union Jack and like sending the pirates to Davy Jones' locker and threatening to have them all hanged. Like, he is a capital G, capital B good boy, and the pirates are villains, which I think is probably the one thing that you shouldn't steal from Treasure Island. Everything else is like textbook. But yeah, I think you want to be the pirates. You want to feel like you're the good guys. You want to feel like you're the rebels.
Which means we have to have the entire rest of the world be shittier than the act of piracy.
Yes. So I had something similar as my first. I'm like, you need to feel like the good guys or the heroes, or at least sympathetic. And yes, I went a little bit more specific than that. I was like, specifically the establishment, the authority. They've got to be the worst kind of, boot heel, grinding you down, pseudo-fascist, like
we see that in Pirates of the Caribbean, right? We have the historical example that they draw from. It's the Dutch East Indies Trading Company.
Who were bad people.
They're just the worst. All they do is go and exploit other areas for massive profit at the expense of the people who live there. And so when the pirates steal their stuff, you're like, those lovable scamps. Look at them go.
So, yeah, I think it is worth, again, I don't think the economics of it are super interesting, except it keeps coming up, so maybe they are.
All right, now's my chance to slip it in. A lot of piracy in the old days was actually privateers, which was where you had like a letter sanctioned by the monarchy to say, I'm allowed to go do piracy against this other nation's ships. I can steal their stuff, and there's like legal representation for me to do so.
Yeah, letters of marque. Yeah. I'm going to put a pin in letters of marque and come back to it because I think letters of marque are like a great MacGuffin, and we'll talk about MacGuffins in a sec.
Yeah, I do just love in that whole era where it's like, if you hold the document, you are granted power.
Exactly.
Like, deeds occur. Like, the physical manifestation of a social contract that gives you power.
The physical manifestation of a social contract. So, a contract.
You could say that, but I am not a lawyer.
So yeah, there's this idea of like, there's all these avenues for like, you could be legitimized pirates, you could be buccaneers, you could be lovable scamps who have like escaped execution for a paltry misunderstanding, for stealing some bread for your orphans. All of our pirates are somehow redeemable and have been perhaps wronged by the system in some way.
We often have the old heart of gold, where they do crime, but nobody's really getting hurt by it. It's like having the thief who only steals insured goods. That kind of a vibe. You're still not morally black.
Exactly. And yeah, so there's this whole fascinating, there's all these fascinating things where it's like, actually, life on board a pirate ship is genuinely maybe better than, the world that spawned the Dutch East India Company, the first corporation in the world that was invented to do colonialism. Like, life on board a pirate ship is like relatively democratic.
Well, I was about to say, you can very clearly stage protest and it has very immediate effects. Except they call it mutiny on a ship.
Yeah.
If you want to depose the leader, you can just do that with enough people on your side.
And it's usually a relatively peaceful sort of transfer of power. Or there will be, in Treasure Island, Silver steps down and he's like, I'll declare the captaincy vacant. We'll all say our piece and then we'll vote on a new captain, which is certainly much nicer than anything the Dutch East India Company was doing.
There's a strong incentive to say your piece and rescind power peacefully and not die. I mean, in Pirates of the Caribbean, a significant part of Jack's backstory is that he was mutinied against and then left for dead on an island.
Yeah, I believe the quote is viciously mutinied upon.
So, being on a pirate ship, relatively democratic. You have a more tangible say in the little microcosm that you're choosing to call home. Work is done relatively equally. Oh my God, is it the hippie commune we've always dreamed of?
I was just thinking that. It's like all of the treasure is split, if not equally, then fairly. There's a number of shares and people will get treasure according to their share, and that's all up for negotiation. There's a lot of evidence that women, or at least non-men, people with diverse sexualities and genders were sometimes, but not always, treated better or more equally on board pirate ships than necessarily in broader society. It was kind of a little home for outcasts, for people who would be crushed under the boot of the very strict, broader Christian society at the time.
So you're telling me they should be sailing under the rainbow flag?
Look, I would not characterize that as incorrect. So yeah, they were these little bubbles, and I think that for players, for role-playing game players, I think that is the fun space to play in, right? Is like, it's this very free-flowing, lots of like fun ways to play with kind of internal power struggles and relationships within the crew, lots of diversity in the kinds of characters you can play. No one's going to bat an eye, quote unquote, in realism if you want to play a person who's missing a leg, or a person who is a woman, a person whose gender and how they present kind of doesn't, or sex and how they present doesn't kind of match. It's a rich playground, the pirate ship, is what I'm trying to say, very clumsily.
And like, that's only inwardly focused. That's only the things that are inside the ship. But then being on the ship also lets you choose where in the world you want to go and which adventures you want to pursue. It's almost like in a JRPG, where you've got the intra-party relationships, but then you zoom out to the overworld and you decide, where do you want to go now? Do I want to go over to these islands or this fortress or this port? And what shenanigans am I going to pursue on the overworld?
Yeah, should we talk about, I guess, to stick an RPG label on it, quest hooks? Should we talk about what those plot hooks are and what kinds of plots they point to?
There's one really powerful one, right?
It's the treasure map, right?
It's the treasure map.
Yeah. That is the classic. Again, all of the tropes stem from this one source. Jim finds a map in the sea chest of old Billy Bones, who's been staying at the Benbow Inn. Yeah, it's a classic. It's a classic for a reason. There's a really interesting dynamic that happens around the treasure map in a lot of these things, which is that, yes, it is I guess, a literal clue. There's a puzzle element to it in universe, because they were often deliberately kind of, I guess, encrypted, right? That like it's...
Yeah, you might need certain clues or like pieces of information to be able to understand. Or it's a more explicit invitation. It's pieces of a treasure map. And you have the rumors about where the other pieces are. And like that becomes the quest in and of itself.
Putting the map together, absolutely. So like you can stack layers on layers on layers.
It's such an interesting plot hook. And like the motivation, we didn't discuss motivations of being on the crew. So if you are a pirate, well, presumably you don't want to live by the rules of the rest of the world, but you still need money to get by. You're still an actor in this space. So that means you can just be driven by the want for cash and the choice of how you get that. A treasure map is just like it's just money at the end of a path.
Yeah.
And then the way that you get there is up to you, because you're the one with the ship and you can choose how to navigate that. Like, it's such a powerful tie-in to the premise of the world and the characters that are in.
Yeah. So staying on motivations for a sec, yeah, I think it's similar to what we talked about when we did our Firefly episode, right? Like, everyone has a reason that they want to stay flying and stay out of the rest of society. There's something sort of pushing them out, but there's also a pull. There's also something that they want. And whether that's like, usually I think that's going to be money or treasure or fortune or luxury or riches or comfort. Like, there's a pull factor as well. There's a reason that they're not just begging on the streets. There's a reason they've joined up on the crew. So yeah, back to our map. I think there's two really great elements to the map in these stories. One is that they are a puzzle to solve, and that is a super great thing to have as a game master. The other thing that the treasure map is a MacGuffin, right? It is an object that having it and knowing its secrets is power and leverage, which is almost entirely how it's used in Treasure Island. And, that's how the compass is used in Pirates of the Caribbean. Like holding the map, knowing what is on the map, being able to hand the map over as part of an exchange, bargain for the map, lose the map, find the map. On top of being a fun puzzle to solve, there's also a whole game of like the map is moving around. So again, Treasure Island, they keep the contents of the map and even in the existence of the map secret from the crew because they suspect, they don't want the crew to mutiny. And then at the end, once they've like moved the treasure, spoilers for this like 200-year-old books. Once they've like moved the treasure, they're like, oh, and now we can like give the map to Long John Silver as part of the bargaining because now we know the map is worthless and he doesn't. Like, so the map is a puzzle, but it's also an instrument of like power and value and bargaining.
And things only really become interesting when the existence of the map is known by a lot of parties, but the information of the map is not. The information of the map is constrained, but people are aware that plots can be afoot.
And again, you get layers of this because you have the map as a physical object, you have the information on the map, you have the solves to each of the clues that are on the map, and each one of those is also something that can be kind of traded and bartered. It's this like little nested doll of like a MacGuffin inside a puzzle inside a MacGuffin inside a puzzle, you know? It's
You can build the entire adventure around just that.
And you should.
In Pirates of the Caribbean, it's much less focused on a map and more focused on pulling all the pieces of treasure back together into a place. But we still have the elements of nobody knows where the crew of the Black Pearl make port. Nobody knows where their hidden island is. So it's not like you can just go out and stop them because we still have a hidden location that Jack Sparrow ends up giving that information to Commander Norrington. And that becomes like a big feather in his cap to be the one who gets to go and make war on these pirates.
Quite literally a big feather in his cap.
All right, so what else have we got? What else is important to the vibe of a pirate story?
I think it's probably worth spending a bit of time talking about who the antagonist is or what the antagonist is. And I think there's kind of two broad boxes here. One is the competing parties for the treasure, some of whom could be other pirates who are pirates but bad. Some of whom could be the authorities who you're trying to, get out from under the thumb of. But then I think there are the broader kind of environmental hazards of going to sea. And that is a huge part of these stories. There are storms and shipwrecks. You get becalmed and run out of rations. There are jagged reefs and unknowns out there in this literally uncharted territory. So there's this huge sort of swath of environmental hazards as well. I think those are both good things to kind of start to think about as you put a story together, because you want to have some of both, right? You want to have some rival parties essentially for the treasure. That gives you someone to have this power dynamic with around the information and the clues and stuff.
And very importantly, provides opportunities to kick the plot.
And move it along, yeah.
Having a rival party makes sure that the plot isn't static.
It's always a race. And I think the other hazards are, I guess, if we're thinking about this as a bit of a race for the treasure, the other hazards are your speed bumps, right? Like they're the things you have to get past on the way, the challenges that are in between you and the treasure, which is, are more up to your skill versus the world than a sort of battle of wits. The other big one, now that I think about it, which is kind of its own third box, I think we talked a bit about mutiny before. I think if you're not constantly facing the threat of mutiny from within your own crew, I don't think you really have a pirate story. So maybe there's a third faction or a third box, a third category. You're telling me, here.
Like in this spinning of plates, it's not only do I have to get to the treasure faster than everyone else,
Yep.
I have to do it while navigating all of these real world hazards that could cause significant damage to my ship, my home, my ability to move through the world, and the people that are on it. But I also need to keep them happy.
Yeah, I think so.
Why does being a pirate suddenly feel like domesticity?
Or a job. But yeah, that's the risk, right? Is you're always every move you make. And again, because I literally finished reading the book yesterday, like every move that like Long John Silver makes, he is spending a little bit of like capital with his crew. And he's like, I know we have to do this. It's just around the next corner. And they just get, the longer it takes to get the treasure, the less like sway he has over them and the closer they get to mutiny. And crew morale is a very real thing that you should have to contend with in these stories. And I don't think it necessarily has to be a quote unquote bad thing or an unfun thing, right? Like being marooned or cast away, being forced to walk the plank, like these are also part of the story. And the bit where Jack is marooned on the island, that is one of the most iconic parts of the Pirates of the Caribbean, story, is that he gets marooned and he gets marooned on the same island with the same gun, and like it's all part of the story, and how you get off the island is part of the challenge, and how you get back in the race is part of the challenge.
Absolutely agree. Like, it's not a failure state. It's just more opportunity to generate interesting plots.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think mutiny also has to be an option. I think your own crew also has to be, if not an adversary, then a challenge that is in your way.
And there is one thematic component that I think we haven't touched on yet. In a lot of especially modern pirate media, there's often a supernatural element. And it results very frequently in there being skeletons. We have like ghost ships. We have ships full of skeleton crews. There's a lot of like foreboding language around a lot of dead man's chest kind of a vibe. So I think we should have some little, like, we could play it entirely straight. I think that's entirely viable. But I think because of that, the world is still unknown and we haven't charted everything. We haven't figured everything out. There's a lot of space to fill there with supernatural elements.
So this is the thing that I found really fascinating in Treasure Island, right? Treasure Island does not have a supernatural, anything actually supernatural in it. But that doesn't stop the people, the pirates especially, being superstitious about it, right? They are all afeared of the devil, and what will happen to them in the next life is constantly held over their heads. And there's a bit where Ben pretends to be the ghost of Captain Flint. There is a bit, there's heaps of bits where like things are bad luck or bad omens. Yeah, you're right. Because the world is not explored or explained, we don't know. There was a really fun thing in Treasure Island, which is that Hawkins, our young protagonist, is like, there were fucking monsters on that island. And then because it's written kind of as a retrospective, he adds in brackets, I later learned that they're called sea lions. But he's like, I didn't want to go up on that beach because there were supernatural beasts there.
Unusual beasts. Beasts of unusual size.
And it's just because he's never seen a sea lion before, because why would he? He grew up in Bristol. Like, yeah, there's all of these things that perhaps now would be explained, and for these people, yet that gap in the map has not been like shaded in.
There's still the Hib there be dragons component to the world.
Exactly.
I don't think it's a critical piece, but I think superstition is a critical piece.
Yeah.
Whether it's realized or not is not critical.
Yeah. Whether you choose in your particular story to make it real or not is definitely something that your characters should be afraid of. So there's one more thing that I had on my list, and it's something that we kind of touched on when we talked about Mad Max. It's this idea of this like veneer of civility, right? Of gentlemanliness. And it is tied into these ideas about, the Pirates Code and all of this stuff. But you see it in all of these things. The captain is always acting like more of a gentleman than perhaps they are.
More of a noble kind of a posture.
Yeah, and it even when they refer to themselves as like, we're not pirates, we're just gentlemen of fortune.
I mean, we even see that in the costume design in all of the Pirates of the Caribbean things and media of that ilk, where all of the folk who are working the ship are in greasy, often rags or cargo pant type things and singlets, but the captain has gold buttons and a fine coat.
Exactly, and I think that's kind of a perfect metaphor for it, right? Like Barbossa wears finery, but it's dirty and poorly kept, but he's very attached to his very big hat and his like finery and his like ruffles. Yeah, he sits Elizabeth down for dinner and is like, you join me for dinner. It's, bad manners if you don't. And she is like, no one tries to run away, and like that's when things become kind of uncivil. But there's this like playing at civility and playing at honor, even though you know they'll stab you in the back or turn foul as soon as it suits them. I have nice things that I stole from somebody after I killed them.
But yeah, I think it is very important to distinguish that murder is often not the first point of call. Like, deals can be made with these individuals. Leverage can be attained, and you are often worth more to them alive than dead. If it was just a ship full of people that pull up and immediately indiscriminately just start killing, then you've got reavers, not pirates. Pirates are still people.
And so you can start to see how it all starts to fit together, right? You have these people who live in this bubble and have this code and aren't necessarily kind of morally absolute. And so yes, they're not going to kill people straight away, not just because it's maybe morally questionable, but also because they might be useful. And you also have this dynamic going on where everyone is after the treasure. And so people are useful not just as hostages, but also because of what they might know. They're useful because of what the clues they might have. And so you just have this beautiful set of pieces of people and agendas and MacGuffins and objects and information, and sometimes things are all three, and they're all kind of swirling around and being traded and bartered and leveraged to try and get the treasure at the end. So I think it's really interesting how, all of that stuff that we have kind of word vomited out is like, they often take hostages. There's got to be a map. Like, they've got this veneer of civility. Like, it actually all does hang together, sort of. It's all part of the power game that's going on to try and get the prize.
Now, there is one thing that we haven't touched on yet, which I think is very important to the vibe, if not the mechanics. And that's pirates are well known, or pirate adventures are well known for the swashbuckling of the characters.
What do you mean by swashbuckling, Jords?
The characters are doing bombastic, over-the-top, often ridiculous stunts to pull their things off. And Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is full to the brim of these. You know, it might be like fighting in an unusual place, like up in the sails. They're doing fancy footwork while the ship is swaying on the seas, and it's full of acts of daring. It's the classic swinging from a chandelier when you're in port and in an actual city so that you can double foot kick the guy in the chest and he tumbles over the railing.
Yeah, I think swinging from a chandelier is a massive cliche, and I'm pretty sure it also happens in the first 10 minutes of Curse of the Black Pearl. Like,
it is absolutely ridden with cliches. Everything that you could possibly have in a pirate tale is crammed into there. I actually made a note of this. There's the point where Jack and Will, they've gone to Tortuga to find a crew so that they can chase down the Black Pearl and recover Elizabeth. And the opening scene of them on the Isle of Tortuga is just hilariously over the top. Every pirate thing that you could cram into it. It's like, all right, what would happen in the lawless city? Everything that's big and over the top that could happen happens in a swashbuckling story.
Yeah. I have one last thing as well, and it is also a vibe thing, and I'm really glad that you have raised Tortuga because I think it has some of the best examples of this in the franchise. It's two things, and I'm sure as we get to prep, you can figure out exactly how to incorporate them into the game, but I'm just gonna do them rapid fire. One of them is rum.
Yep.
There's got to be rum. It's always about the rum. And the other one is music, which I love about Tortuga because it just jumps into this like Irish like hornpipe essentially, and it's just the best fight scene music maybe in all of cinema. It's just this like it's music that you want to get into a bar brawl to. And so there's a very particular type of music that comes with these pirate things. It's kind of essential to setting the vibe, and it's not difficult to find. And I think your session should take advantage of it.
On the topic of Tortuga as well, back to the economics of piracy. It is a really good example of, okay, you're a pirate, you're recovering treasure. If you've taken that from some other nation, then you're probably going to get in trouble for it. So there has to exist some place that you can do this sort of illegal commerce. And Tortuga is like the place that's allows you to fence your stolen or recovered goods.
Yeah, the free port.
It's such an effective place to you looking for plots, go to Tortuga, you'll find some information. Someone will absolutely exchange a bottle of rum for some rumors or a piece of a pirate map that they can't leverage in any other way, or they might have made copies of and give to a bunch of people. Like it's a fertile ground, the place that's outside of society.
I think your ship should feel like your home base, but Tortuga should feel, I guess, like a pit stop, right? It should be a recurring setting where you can start to sort of develop connections and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good place to be like, well, I don't know what to do next. I can pull in at Tortuga and something will help me there.
Yeah. All right.
So we got our big pillars down pat. Quick recap. We've got a ship.
Yep.
An eclectic crew.
Mm-hmm.
A map upon which maybe our whole adventure hinges. We've got a potential for supernatural, but we have a strong superstition. We have a pirate base that allows us to exchange goods and services outside the realms of good society. And we still hold on to the trappings of that good society with an air of civility.
In terms of structure, we are basically in a race for the treasure. We know that there are other parties who are interested in the treasure, some of whom might be the authorities, some of them might be worse pirates, and some of them who might be our own crew or elements thereof. And we also have environmental hazards that are going to come between us and them, our classic storms and shipwrecks and becalmings, which aren't necessarily bad for the story, even though they might be bad for the characters, because they are opportunities to live out that pirate story more and sort of be marooned or be shipwrecked or be becalmed. So yeah, we've got essentially a race kind of structure with that MacGuffin and those clues and, sometimes people changing hands and changing sides, and these very classic obstacles in the way to kind of deal with. So how do we game that?
Having that structure of it's a race, fantastic. That does so much of the work for us straight off the bat. We know that there's an end point, and we know that the map is going to be the most structurally important element to this. Without the map or the knowledge of the map, you can't get to the end of this adventure.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump straight in with a very concrete prep thing and say you should have a physical map prop.
100%. When the players come in, sit down, you've already told them we're going to be doing a pirates-themed game, whether that's a one-shot or a campaign. They all sit down, you talk about the characters, what their ties to the ship are, and then you give them a map.
Absolutely.
Then that's the seed to adventure, that's what calls them, that's what propels them forward.
No hecking around trying to find the map. I think probably we jump straight in with the map.
Yep, I would just have the scene where the map is given. So it's like, it's not a you all meet in a tavern. It's you were in a tavern last night and this person picked up a map in a game of dice. Maybe we play some lies dice as well. How great. But yeah, you've got some excuse to be like, and here is the adventure.
That is such a cool moment. And one of my pitches for this show is or one of my ways of describing kind of the pillars that we talked about is if you sat down to play a game, what would you be disappointed you didn't get? If I sat down to play a pirate game and there wasn't at least graph paper dunked in tea bags, it doesn't have to be high effort, but if I sit down and we don't get handed a rolled up piece of paper, I'm going to be disappointed.
I want a yellowy brown map.
Yeah.
That makes me feel like I'm in a pirate story.
Yep.
Now, what should be on this map?
I feel like you are the one with strong opinions about clues, so I'm actually going to put this question back to you.
I was baiting you. So if we made this really easy and was just okay, here is the map, which essentially acts like a point crawl structure for the players, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a couple obstacles, maybe a few different ways that you could take your ship from here to there. If it just has the destination at the end, then what that boils down to is your players saying, well, I will go from here to the shoals of the undead, through the pass of the mighty, and then around the archipelago, and that's where we'll find the final X. Okay, well, that's very straightforward. I want to have a few complications along the way. So what I would then do is either physically divvy up pieces of the map and only give them the starting piece at the very beginning, and like some rumors about where you might find the other pieces. Or we come up with like, this is my GM's map that has all of the information that I need to be able to point players along, but I now need to encode that information and obfuscate a couple of bits of it. And then that's the player version of the map that they're going to get. And when they unlock these turns of phrase or these landmarks or like view from somewhere, the rest of it will snap into place and allow them to point along. So I am turning the point crawl, which a complete cartographically correct map trivializes, into something a little bit more abstract, where there are now interstitial journey points. That's like, you can't just go from A to B to C to D. You might have to divert A to C to get the piece that tells you where B is. And then we bump along in that.
I will say, as a game master, one of the nice things about building your whole thing around a map where you know what the destination is that it does make it very easy to prep those locations along the way.
And it also gives you a really clear idea of pacing.
Yeah, so there are many paths that the players might take across the map, but you know that they're probably not going to go off the edges of the map, because you know that they're trying to get from point A to point B across the space in between. And so you know that they're not going to wander off away from the treasure, because that's not what this story is about. Talk to me a bit more about pacing.
Ultimately, this is going from one location to another location and facing obstacles along the way or at the destination, right? If you have some structure around how many locations you expect players to go, you then also know how long it's going to take them to get there. It does make it a little bit tricky to remove elements dynamically. You are constraining yourself to being like, well, in the fiction, we know that you're at point A and I know the treasure's at point D. We still do have to go through B and C for it to make sense.
I think there are some ways around that. I think you can choose whether to, I guess, toggle challenges at locations on or off or up or down. There can be a shoal that you had planned to be treacherous, that if you're running close to time, it's like you can just narrate that they pass through the shoal with some, a steely hand. I think there's, or it's the kind of thing where this could be a whole scene, navigating the shoals, navigating the maelstrom, or it could be like one roll that you narrate around in a minute or two, right? Like, there are ways to stretch these
you can zoom in,
scenes.
zoom out to the individual challenges.
Exactly.
But you can't easily simply remove the overland travel aspect without breaking the verisimilitude.
Yeah. So how are you kind of picking how much goes on the map? How much is between the players and the treasure? So
this one kind of lends itself really well to a very simple point crawl that diverges and then converges, right? Mike Shea from Sly Flourish calls these yam-shaped adventures, but we don't have yams in Australia. What it looks like is you have a discrete starting point and a discrete ending point, and they are physical locations on the map. Then we have like different options that the players can choose when they exit the port city. They jump on their ship and they say, I'm going to sail one of three directions. Then from that point, we again have one of three directions on the next geographical layer. Maybe one of three directions on the next graphical layer, and then all of them point towards the finish. So we have a single starting point, a certain width, 3 is the usual choice, certain width of options that they can choose from, and then you just maintain that with a couple different options along the way, and then it all condenses back down to the X marks the spot.
I love how literal it is. Like, yeah, literally X marks the spot. It's good stuff.
And like, it's very easily maintained in a geographically relevant space because you have a map. The map is The map is a geographical space, and you're just putting dots on it to say this is where the island volcano is.
I think it's also worth taking a moment to talk about what we're not doing, which is at least not within the confines of an adventure, within the confines of a session. We're not, I think, doing a sandbox, right?
No.
Like, this
This
is
is
not
directed.
we are driving our ship and we can pick any hex or grid point that we want, even though maybe we want it to feel that way. We want that feeling of freedom for the players. This is not a hex crawl. This is not free exploration.
This is not a swimming pool. This is a water slide.
Exactly. Wow, that's a god tier throwback. Well done. So yeah, even though we look at other pirate games, you look at things like Sea of Thieves, you look at things like Pirates, and yeah, as a player, those are really open world. They're sandbox. You can kind of pick and choose what you're working on right now. I think if you're a game master picking a session or building a session, you've got to imagine that you, as the player of those computer games, have already sort of decided what you want to do for this session of play, and now you're working your way towards it and trying not to get distracted along the way. And I think there's room to have a lot more of that freewheeling stuff if you're running like a campaign.
I think this would lend itself really well to a campaign structure if you wanted to do something that's like a big old point crawl or a hex crawl. But for the sake of our session prep right now, nope, we've given a quest hook in the form of a map, and that's what it revolves around.
Yeah, and I think if you wanted to set a campaign up like that, you're almost, you've got your big open world map, but any given week, any given session, you are sitting down and running an adventure that is directed across, a portion of that map. And maybe the players at the end of each adventure have some agency to see where they'd like to explore next in a kind of downtime sort of structure. But any given session, I think, needs to be an adventure.
And I think there's a really nice implication in that. And that's if we're choosing where the players are going to go by giving them the map that tells them this is the end point, the adventure is getting from here to there. That means that we also need to have the answers to the holes in the player's information along the way. So if we've only given them a piece of a map and they need to find the rest of the pieces, we know that the holes are the players don't know the whole route to the destination, which means we have to plug those gaps for them or have the facility to plug those gaps for them.
And I think the other thing that lets us do, in addition to sprinkling information throughout our structure, it also lets us sprinkle challenges throughout our structure, right? So because once we have that, we know that they're going to visit a certain number of points, and all of the points are going to lead them to one end, we can start to spread challenges across that, whether they are things like encounters with other rival groups, or whether they are environmental hazards. I don't know that you necessarily need to prep them super differently, or whether those are, I guess, internal triggers for things like mutiny and shipwrecking or marooning. But make sure that the players are getting a little bit of all of those things. They're getting a little bit of ship-to-ship combat. They're getting some sailing through storms. They're getting some traipsing across islands, so that the texture of the story, which is kind of set by those challenges, they're going to have a good experience or a complete pirate experience kind of no matter what path they pick.
So I'm reading between the lines here a little bit. To me, that says if we want to have all of these different pirate elements show up in a single session, we're not looking for complete simulationisty stuff. We're looking for something that allows us to be a bit more flexible with the plot beats, so we can say, oh, this would be a really good time to introduce rival pirate crew showing up.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to think about how many hexes rival pirate crew's ship can have traveled to actually beat them there.
And I don't want to think about which way the wind is blowing and whether they can tack this way or that.
Yep.
Because I'm not a sailor.
And likewise, I don't want to be, if we're doing, you're becalmed and you've run out of rations. I don't want to be tracking rations. I almost want that
rations
to be...
are a toggle switch.
Yeah, or like the same way in some games, money is an ability and you just roll with your money bonus to see if you can afford something. It's like, okay, let's roll rations and see if you've run out of salted pork. Like that level of, I don't want to be tracking individual barrels. I want that kind of level of granularity where it doesn't feel like I've necessarily just lumped it on you or declared it arbitrarily, but we're also not keeping track of, inventory.
What you've just raised is actually very important as well. The concept of time. It will take time to sail this route. It will take days to do that. Maybe several weeks even. And I think that's really important to capture here because rations are only important if time is
Passing.
measured in a way. Yeah, passing is just the right word. I think it's like a form is coming together in my mind here where I think I'm building my map. I'm going to have some cool ideas about what I want to put down where. So some of these things might be hard things like this is a volcanic island and it's active. And that always means that it's probably going to blow when the players go near it. That's like a hard thing that's set by the location. But then we might have something else that's, not so constrained to the location and could be like on a table or in a deck of cards that I've prepped ahead of time. And I say like, oh, I'm going to draw from this random deck. And what do you know? That's the thing that has occurred here. A storm blows in is a really good one. The storm can be the plot point, but more importantly, it offers the decision of, do you want to sail through and risk damage to like the crew's morale, or do you want to put in at the nearby location and deal with whatever adventure happens there? And I think this is where we have a really fun space that you can say, every choice that you make here has some consequence. You can progress forward, but the crew's not going to like it. And it's almost like one of the the Telltale games from the past, or a Mass Effect or something. Long John didn't like that. And with a very simple tracker, you can just say like, oh, crew morale is really low. Like they are considering overthrowing you.
Yeah. I think that's also raised another thing to think about here for me as well, which is, you've got that concept of time. That's a great thing to put on the map and put in front of the players as a thing they need to think about making their decision, right? Are they going to take the fast but dangerous route, or are they going to take the slower route but risk, losing the first dibs on the treasure?
I think the fast but dangerous route is often the easy choice in a lot of games that I've played because GMs might not know how to give real consequences for danger. We talked about this a little bit on our Firefly episode, where it can be hard to endanger the ship because without the ship, the whole story grinds to a halt. And certainly like in a space story, if you blow the ship, all the characters die the end. But in this world, you can blow a ship and they will always float to the next available island or be picked up and have to like barter their way off or something like that. There are opportunities here that the ship could be disposable and the story can still go on.
Again, I'm thinking about how this turns into game and how we want players kind of thinking about their decisions on how they're going to move across the map. And you kind of want them looking at like some number of stress tracks or some kind of push your luck, like mechanic, something like that, where they're like, okay, we went hard and fast before, but morale is low or rations are low or the ship is damaged. Are we going to go hard and fast again and push our luck, or are we going to, put into port? Like, you want something that is going to ratchet the tension up as they make these decisions. And on the other end of that balance, right, you've got, the ship is accruing damage or the rations are depleting or the morale is going down. Your counterbalance to that is a similar clock or track that is constantly ticking up as their estimation of where the rival crews are at increases and kind of pushes them forwards. So I think
I think you've got like a couple of different spots on the map where you might be able to see the bads. See
or
where
get
the rival team
rumors
is.
like,
Yeah.
oh, they passed through here a few days ago. Oh no, we haven't seen anyone for like months. You find a marooned sailor from one of the other crews, you know.
Which means on the GM side of the screen, you also need to be tracking where the bad guys could feasibly be.
Yes.
But you're always allowed to fudge it a little bit because you can place them where the most interesting scenarios will occur.
Yeah. So I think that's really key. It's you need to know where they might be or where they could be.
Yeah.
You need to
It's
have
like
an
a
idea.
probability distribution. It's feasible they could be here or just over the way on the other side of the island.
Exactly. So you need to have an idea of where they are kind of relative to the players, but I don't think you need to be getting out the measuring tape and tracking their movement. I think it's just a vibe of like, are they ahead? Are they behind?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm thinking I've got these hard constraints of these are geographically interesting places and my players can choose to visit them or not. I've got something like a random series of events, either held in a table or a deck of cards, that I can deploy. That might be like, there is a squall and it's a really bad storm. You pull up these random encounters when you don't have an interesting thing nearby, or it's like part of the journey between interesting things. Our players are making choices about which way they want to take the story. It almost boils down, in my mind, to a series of scarcities and abundances. So what do we have that's abundant? Well, we've got a lot of food and a lot of morale, so we can push our luck a little bit on that front. What do we have that's scarce? Ooh, our ship is pretty damaged at the moment. We should probably find somewhere that we can pull in for repairs. Easy things like that allow the players to make informed decisions about which way they're going to go. And then the thing that we haven't spoken about yet is what types of characters we think should be in the adversarial teams. So whether that's, the Commander Norrington equivalent who's flying under the Union Jack, or if it's the, Captain Barbosa who's on the rival pirate vessel who's also chasing you down.
I mean, those are the obvious kind of archetypes. I think you can also, this is a good place to dig into players' pasts, or characters' pasts, I should say, and dig out some rivalries, some old nemesis. The pirate stories are filled with revenge because people keep mutinying on each other. So weird. I think that's a really rich vein to tap into, and if you can find a way to have each player have connections on those crews, again,
I was going to say exactly the same thing.
You start to have interesting bits of leverage where maybe you can ask a favor, maybe they ask a favor of you, maybe you don't want to fire on that ship because your brother is in the Navy.
See, I was going to say, I really want, what I want to avoid is, you see the rival ship in the horizon and the players go, oh, well, let's just not engage with that. No, I want there to be a reason for them to want to pursue some action there. So it's like, oh, yes, but your brother is actually indentured on that ship.
Right, they've got someone
there is
captive.
A reason to collide and board and escape if you can. If you can be sly about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely, it's a small world, piracy, and I think you should introduce as many chances as you can to have players know other characters and have relationships with other characters.
So I think when I'm asking these players to make their characters at the table, I want to know who their connections are, who their jilted lovers are, who they're in debt to or they hold a grudge against, some points of leverage that I'm then just immediately going to dot onto enemy vessels, rival crews, the authorities. That causes some beautiful friction later and gives them motivation to engage with those parties instead of just keeping them at arm's length.
But also, if we can attach a meta reward to that, even better. If we can hand you a doubloon of some kind, or hand you a clue, or hand you some kind of out of game
Well, I mean, That's one of the easy ones for the rival crews, right? If it's a map that's been divided up into 4 parts, well, there is a reason to go sneak aboard the enemy ship and try and retrieve their piece of the map.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I feel like we've kind of got a bit of a prep structure here. It's built around a map. We've populated it with interesting places, interesting obstacles, interesting rivals and characters, and we are essentially, over the course of a session, we're asking our players to navigate their way across that and make calls about which way to go based on their current state and what their current knowledge is about rivals and their own needs and what they need to get to the end point. I think there's a couple of just proppy things that I would add, like super concrete things. One is obviously, we talked about music. I think you need to have a banging soundtrack for this. One is, I think you need to just really it's not okay to do many accents these days, but it's so okay to do a pirate voice. So you need to be leaning into your pirate voice. And I think you need to have some rum at the table.
I also think if you have control of the lighting, a relatively dim but warmly lit space.
Yeah. If you could do like a candle flicker.
Delightful.
Ideal.
Yeah, that screams pirate vibe to me.
On to the most and yet also sometimes least important question. Having designed this structure, what are we going to use to make it all work?
Right. I've got a couple of thoughts about what I would look for in a system that runs this. Ultimately, I think it can plug into so many different types of system. There are just a couple elements of some systems negate certain aspects of it that I would want to avoid. But what I want here is high on the swashbuckling sense, which means that I want my players to be able to do cool stunts and fight in interesting ways and solve problems in very bombastic methods, which means that I don't want them to die easily. So I want a system that caters for them to do interesting things without risk of character death being the first point of call. I think death could be on the table, but I want them to be durable enough. Yeah, robust. I also want something that isn't going to be super granular when it comes down to tracking these things, because I don't think that's the game that we're after. We're not telling a story about do you have 6 rations or 9? I want something that allows you the space to abstract away those things and treat them more like plot beats and calls to action, as opposed to the ledger from the ship's quartermaster. And I do want something that is going to encourage that interesting exploration. So this is where I can think of some systems that negate some of those things by just saying you passed from these things with no issues. I don't want that. I want the issues. The issues of the game here.
Yeah. I feel like I want something with, a stress track or push your luck mechanic and some nice ways to interact with that built in. I feel like I want something with a bit of a meta currency so that I can, 2 reasons. One, that's just such an easy way to remind players to make interesting choices instead of safe choices. It's when we were talking about your brother's on that boat and offering them some meta currency to pursue it and take the dangerous option. That's such an easy shortcut to doing that I think I would want that. The second reason I want a meta currency is because you can get some sick doubloons or something and hand over the pieces of 8.
Yeah.
Incredible opportunity to do some fun props there, just because it is a game all about gold coins. Yeah, and just something that I suppose gives you or reminds you, as you said, to swashbuckle a little bit. Yeah, buckle some swash. Look, I'm just gonna put it out there. I would do this in Fate, and I wouldn't think twice.
What?
What?
Oh no! I didn't know that's what you were building to with all of that prelude.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty clear. Fate has. I would have to go back to the rulebook because I haven't read it for a while. I don't know what the rules are for stress tracks that don't sit on a character. Is the only thing I would have to check. But I think it would be pretty easy to sort of hack that on. But yeah, really easy to just have a bunch of environmental setting aspects, really easy to like have players create links between each other and with the world. Really makes interesting combat doable because that's what the sort of core actions are. Only one of them is attack, and then there's like defend and retreat and create obstacle, like create an advantage. There's all these things that aren't just like default things that aren't just like I fire my cutlass. I fire my flintlock and swing my cutlass.
Which end do the bullets go in?
Yeah, I think that would be a shoe-in for me. I feel a bit bad because I know there's loads of pirate games out there, and I just was too busy reading Treasure Island and did no research on the actual game part of it. And so I've gone back to my default, and I really apologize to anyone out there who was hoping for like a robust review of different pirate systems, because I'm like, nah, I have some tools to do this job.
I think there's a very good case for it to be made for a Forged in the Dark game. I think that would work really well. You can track these things in a really abstract way that makes a good lot of sense. You can just spin up a clock when your rations start running low or the crew morale becomes a little bit of a dangerous thing. All of that I think is very easy to do, and your playbooks can easily reflect like different pirate archetypes as well. So I think that's totally viable choice. However, I think Outgunned would make a perfect vehicle for this.
Okay.
It has a built-in push your luck mechanic that's really nice. I think it would run like rather similar to a Indiana Jones style game where, you've got a couple of pistols and a couple of blades, and you're diving between ships or running through the rigging or swinging off masts and chandeliers. I think that is all really well done in an Outgunned style game. And the characters don't die necessarily. They don't die unless the player consents to them dying. So you can do your bullshit over the top things, but instead of dying, maybe you're swept out to sea and then you show up a little bit later with a scar on your face and a story about how you lashed sea turtles together with the hair off your back. But actually you were just drinking rum until the privateers came by.
Yeah, I like that.
I think it ties really well to this type of fiction. And I think it still affords you a lot of the space, a lot of the looseness that you want to have when you don't want to get ground down in simulation-y type spreadsheet tracking. I feel like we should also mention there is a very well-known pirate game, Pirate Borg, based on Milkborg. It's an OSR-y style feel, and I think it has its place, and I think it will tell really fun stories, but I don't think I would choose it as my first pick for the type of story we've just described.
I think that's fair.
For the reason of character lethality. Like, I think if you wanted to play that way, I would, instead of being tied to your character, I would instead have a nice roster for the crew so that when your character does a thing and eats shit and dies, you can instantly pull up another member of the crew and be like, well, now I'm mainlining this guy instead.
Well, two very surprising recommendations there, and at least one of us has read the pirate RPG that I'm sure Reddit recommends. So
100%, they'll just say Pirate Borg and leave it at that.
No thought to structure, no thought to planning your experience. Anyway,
no thought to what your players will do.
Our problems
just
with Reddit
do
aside,
Pirate Borg.
Would you run it in 5e?
Now, I laid down those conditions of what I want in a game, and 5e negates some of them.
Yeah.
The most important one is it makes travel either trivial or just not interesting.
Yeah.
So when you have a character who has the ability to summon fresh food and water at any point in time, suddenly rations aren't very important. When you have someone who can control the weather, suddenly that storm is no longer important.
It's an interesting thing that I saw on, I think, the Alexandrian recently, where it's like, D&D does this thing where like a player will indicate that they care about doing a particular thing, and the game will anti-reward them by trivializing that thing. It's like, I want to be a really good wilderness explorer. It's like, great, you auto-succeed on all your survival checks. We're never going to talk about wilderness ever again.
It's not part of the game.
Yeah.
Yep. I guess I'll just give you a sentence or two about how good you were at doing that, but like, it's not the game anymore. So I think 5e has a lot of those problems, especially if, like, I tell my players, we're going to play a swashbuckling pirate adventure in 5e, and we're going to do it at X level. Well, I know they're going to pick the spells that automatically give them an edge in that world. That's the natural course of action, and that kind of undoes some of the fun.
It's got some anti-patterns, we might say.
Whereas I think if you were to do this in a 5e-like game like Shadow of the Demon Lord or Shadow of the Weird Wizard, at least when you've got characters who have a spell list available to them, they're constrained by the type of flavor of magic that they want. So not everyone is going to pick Control Weather and, turn undead and whatever the thing is that's going to pop up. You might have a player who is a hydromancer who trivializes some aspect of it, but they're not going to take away everything by also having Good Berry and Conjure Fresh Water.
Yep. I think the only situation where I would is if it was an existing campaign and we were doing like a pirate episode, right? Like a pirate arc. I think it would be fun. I think it could be really fun to pull some existing characters into that, which kind of obviates that problem. And it means that if they do have something that's relevant, it's cool that they have something relevant instead of being designed that they have something relevant. But yeah, I wouldn't set out to run a pirate game in 5e. All right, so that's a no to running it in 5e. Would you run it at all?
I already have. I would do it again.
Great. Yeah, me too. I think this is an easy sell.
It's also just like so abundantly saturated in media that players are literate. If you hand them a yellowy map of the archipelago and it's got an X on it, they know what to do with it. Like, the tropes are there to be played into and have fun with, and I think players will do that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Everyone knows pirates.
Yep.
All right, that's it.
That's pirates.
We've solved pirates.
We've solved pirates. This has been Platonics. Thank you to everyone who wrote in over our break and requested episodes, of which this was one. If you have some suggestions, we're still taking them. You can get in touch with us at hello@platonics.net. But the place we would love to see you is on our Discord, where we are still sort of hashing out what we're going to do this season. So if you do have suggestions, jump on Discord and let us know. We're also in all the usual places. You can find us on Blue Sky, Mastodon, and Threads. We are on Reddit, so if you see u/Platonics post an interesting take, please fang us an upvote. But really the biggest thing that you can do to help the show keep happening is to send it to your friends. If you have someone who you reckon would enjoy listening to us, pick the thing that they like. Don't just send them a link to the show. Pick an episode out for them. Be like, I think you should listen to this one. I think you would really enjoy doing this. Send it to your friends who are game masters. Also send it to your friends who aren't game masters but might want to give it a go. Send it to your friends who are players and just maybe want to get some perspective from the other side of the screen about how they can bring more adventure and pacing and vibes to the table. That's the best thing you can do is to share not just the show, but send an episode to somebody who you think will enjoy it. Because that's why we do all these different topics. We don't expect everyone to listen to every ep, although we'd love it if you did. But the idea is to sort of bring these ideas about running tight, vibes-heavy sessions to as many people as possible. And I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes the genre is just like the excuse that we need to talk about facilitating great sessions. So yeah, pick an app, send it to a friend. That's your mission for 2026.
And if you have done
listeners,
that, let us know.
Send it to a different friend.
We have
do it again.
Cadre
Right.
of like
I think that's
hardcore
everything.
listeners
Why
that
am I
always
asking
come
you?
back
You don't
and
know how
listen
to
to
do
our
the
stuff.
outro. Yeah, no, that's the
We
big
love
stuff.
you.
Discord,
Tell your
socials,
friends.
find us online at platonics.net or wherever you get your podcasts. We will catch you next time.
Bye!
Bye!